All right, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a strategy video on the integrated task 2. This is the one about the academic course where you'll be combining information from two different sources. Just like with the first integrated task, you have a reading section and you have an audio file, and you have to combine the information from both of them to give your response. This is very much the same as the last integrated task. The actions of what you have to do is the same. The type of information that you have to use is the same. The only difference is that this is an academic course instead of the conversation like the last one. But the way that you give your response to this task type is exactly the same. First of all, you have the reading text here. The reading passage will introduce some sort of topic. It gives a brief definition of what that topic is. And then in the audio file, they will either give an example of that topic, or they will give more information about the topic, like supporting the idea, especially if it's like a scientific theory, or they will contradict the topic. That only happens when it's something like a scientific theory, because if it's something which is factual, it's not really possible to contradict it. But if it's an opinion or a theory, something like that, then it's possible that the person could contradict what is saying here. The most common situation is that they will be giving an example which further illustrates what the topic actually is. Okay, so as far as the strategy, first of all, since you will already know the directions for this task type, and you will know exactly what you have to do to answer this task type, as soon as you hear the directions in the audio file, you can use that time to take a few deep breaths and just relax. You don't necessarily have to pay attention to that, because first you're going to hear the audio file giving the directions, and it's going to tell you that you're going to read a passage which you already know, and it's going to tell you how much time you have to do that, but you'll already know that information. And then once the information comes up on your screen, that's when you have to take the notes. Basically, to do that, you first write down the title of the reading passage, because 99% of the time, the title actually is going to be the topic. However, in this example on this page that you've seen here, you notice that social interaction is what they're talking about, but the specific topic that they're talking about in this reading section is audience effects, which is a type of social interaction. So I put this example here to show you that it's not going to be this way all the time. Sometimes you might have to read a little bit further to find out what the actual topic is. Here, it's audience effects, but most of the time, the title is going to be the topic. So write that down no matter what. If you find as you're reading through the reading passage that there is another term which functions as the topic much better than the title, then of course write that down. But basically you write down what the topic is, you write down the brief definition that they give for it, and that's really all that you need as far as your notes. As I put here, you write down the topic, explanation of what that is, or the definition, and then in the listening section, you might want to write down, something like example, contradict, further information. That part is not required, and it's not really even necessary, but it might help you in giving your response. For example, if the person provides an example, when you are giving your response, you might say, well, in the reading passage, we learn about blah, 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 which is defined as blah, 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 blah. And then in the audio file, the person gives a better example of this. So you're using that term to transition from speaking about the reading passage into speaking about the audio file. Another example would be, in the reading passage, we learn about the theory of something or other, which is defined as this and that. But in the audio file, the professor contradicts what was said in the reading passage because he feels that this and that. So you can use those terms, example, contradiction, further information. You can use those in your response. So if it helps to write it down on your piece of paper, good, do it. If not, don't worry about it. The most important thing that you write down when listening to the audio file is the main idea and the supporting details that the speaker mentions. Now, this is going to be exactly like you would experience in both the reading section and the listening section when you're dealing with an academic topic. There's a main idea, there's almost always two supporting details, and there's probably some examples that help illustrate what those supporting details are, or some kind of an explanation. Those are the main things that you write down. So, for example, on this one, we have example of audio effect, increased speed. And the explanation of that, people often do things faster when they know they are being watched. The second point was with the laces. They talked about the laces. There are two groups. There was one group that was not aware of being watched, one group that was aware. The aware group was faster. And then they gave another example, not only more speed, but also more mistakes. So here they have a third one that they mentioned. Sometimes that will happen, sometimes not. As you can see, I kind of separated it here because when you're giving your response, sometimes it's not necessary to mention this, especially if you are getting done with explaining this part right here and you only have a couple seconds left. It's better to finish your response and not say anything about this than it is to get cut off and not finish your answer. So that's why I put this one a little bit separate, because if there is a third topic or example, if you have time and you can fit it into your answer, definitely do it. If you don't, then, finish up with what you have here, and you'll probably get a better score than if you get cut off trying to stick in this extra information here. So that's really it. It's pretty simple. So when you're reading the reading passage, you write down the title or the topic if they're different, and you write down the explanation or definition. When listening to the audio file, you notice if the person is supporting by giving more information, contrasting, or disagrees, or provides an example of the topic. This is most important for the way that you will give your response. And then you just write what the main idea is and the supporting details and the examples or explanations. It's just like I said, it's just like it is in the reading section and in the listening section when you're listening to a lecture. And this is a technique that will not only help you in the TOEFL exam, but noticing the main idea, supporting details, and explanations. That is something that's going to help you in just about everything, not only in school, but even in life. Because a lot of times noticing these types of things will help you to understand what people are talking about, whether it's a school situation or even just in general. Now, you do not need to paraphrase what was written and spoken about. You can actually use the same words and the same phrases and terms, because the point of this speaking task is not to come up with some sort of a thesis statement in your own words. You're simply showing that you comprehend the information in the reading file and the information in the audio file, and that you can combine those two sources to give a proper answer, just like you did in the last integrated task. So this one is not any more difficult than the one with the conversation. The only thing that is different is the content of the information. This is an academic situation rather than a normal conversation, but the way that you give your response is exactly the same. So first, you introduce the topic stated in the title. In the reading passage, we learn about blank. Second, you explain how that topic is defined or explained, which is defined by or which is blah, 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 blah. So you state what the topic is and explain it. And then you transition from the reading passage into the audio passage by using one of those phrases about contrasting or contradicting, providing an example, etc. And then you speak about what the main topic is, very similarly to the way that you did it here, and the examples and explanations that the person provides to describe that situation. Okay, so as I say here, copy form of good examples. There's an example on the next page, so you can listen to that and get an idea of the form. So really, that's it for the strategy on how to give your response to the second integrated task. Just follow that strategy. And just as I've mentioned in all the other lessons in the speaking section, just practice, practice, practice. Use the clock to make sure that you understand how much information you can put into your response in the amount of time that you have given. And once you know how to answer, every time that you answer a task like this and all the examples that you practice, you will use the same sort of formula, and then your responses will always naturally be the correct amount of time, so you can totally nail it without even trying. All right, so that is it for this lesson. Thank you for stopping by, and we will see you in the next lesson.